Most people drift through life without a clear sense of direction, chasing temporary goals that never satisfy the deep hunger in their hearts. They live according to what others expect of them, follow trends that fade, or pursue careers solely for money, fame, or convenience. But true success, the kind that fills your soul and impacts generations, only comes when you discover and live out your God-given purpose. This isn't just about finding a job or starting a business. It's about uncovering the unique reason you were created. Before you were born, there was a plan for your life. You were designed with intention, not accident. Purpose is not found in comparison. It doesn't come from scrolling through other people's highlight reels or mimicking what's popular. Your purpose is personal. It is planted deep within your heart by the one who made you. That's why no one else can define your success for you until you ask the right questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What was I born to do? You will live in confusion or chase the wrong prize. Too many people wake up every morning living someone else's story, wondering why they feel empty. They follow the crowd but lose their soul. Purpose is also not loud. It doesn't scream at you, it whispers. And in a noisy world, it takes stillness and spiritual clarity to hear it. That's why the 98% often miss it. They're too busy, too distracted, too driven by fear, approval, or urgency. They never slow down long enough to reflect. But those who do, the 2%, make time to seek, to pray, to ask, and to listen. They align their gifts with God's voice and step into a path that brings meaning to their work, peace to their mind, and impact to others. Living without purpose is like sailing without a compass. You may move, but you'll never arrive. You'll try one thing, quit it. Try another, quit again. Try another, quit again. Because without a why, your energy fades. But when you know your purpose, your steps have power. You become consistent even when it's hard. You stay focused even when it's slow. Purpose becomes your internal compass that keeps you steady in storms and humble in success. When you know your God-given purpose, you don't need to be the smartest, the richest, or the most talented. You just need to be faithful. You show up, you build, you serve. And every day you wake up with a fire in your heart that doesn't depend on circumstances. You begin to live from the inside out, not the outside in. You stop performing and start producing. You stop comparing and start creating. You become dangerous to distraction and resilient in setbacks. This clarity of purpose is what separates the few who live fulfilled lives from the many who simply go through the motions. It's not about being lucky. It's about being aligned. The 2% make a choice to stop drifting and start discerning, to stop following the noise and start listening for the whisper of purpose. One of the greatest lies people believe is that they have to wait for perfect conditions before they start moving forward. They say, I'll begin when I have more money, or I'll start when I feel ready, or as soon as everything falls into place, then I'll go for it. This mindset traps the 98% in a cycle of waiting, hesitating, and procrastinating. They keep preparing but never producing. They're stuck in the illusion that clarity must come before commitment, that confidence must precede action. But that's not how life-changing progress works. The 2% understand a powerful truth. The path becomes clear as you start walking it. They don't wait for the stars to align. They step forward in faith with what they have, where they are. They begin before they feel fully equipped. They know that God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. They understand that movement brings momentum. Taking imperfect action is better than standing still in fear or doubt. Most people think that successful people had all the resources, connections, or certainty in place before they started. But if you study their stories, you'll find something very different. They began with less than what they needed, but they didn't let that stop them. There's a dangerous comfort in waiting. It feels safe. It protects you from judgment, rejection, or failure. But in reality, it steals your growth. Waiting too long hardens your heart. It trains your mind to expect disappointment. It slowly kills the dream that once burned bright inside of you. And worst of all, it convinces you that your potential has an expiration date tied to external condition. But the truth is, the only condition that matters is your willingness to obey the inner call. Those in the 2% often began with nothing but conviction. No funding, no support, no perfect plan. Just a vision and a heart willing to act. And through the process of moving forward, they grew into what they needed to become. They learned, adjusted, failed, and tried again. They made mistakes, but those mistakes became their mentors. They didn't let the lack of a perfect environment rob them of progress. They embraced the messy middle and kept going. Perfectionism is a silent killer of purpose. It convinces people to delay their destiny. It hides behind good intentions and keeps them from starting that business, writing that book, launching that project, or changing that habit. The 2% know that perfection is not the goal. Progress is. They understand that growth is messy and beginnings are awkward. They value consistency over comfort and obedience over clarity. They've trained their minds to take action even when they're afraid, even when the plan isn't complete. While the 98% wait for ideal timing, the 2% create their own opportunities through movement. They know that the smallest step in the right direction can open doors they didn't even know existed. They've learned that action invites favor, resources, and breakthroughs. They trust that as they take steps, things will shift. I want you to pause for a moment and let this sink in. Only 2% of people in this world truly succeed in fulfilling their potential. The other 98%, they live far below what they were created for. They survive, but they don't thrive. They exist, but they don't live abundantly. That statistic doesn't just measure economics or achievement. It reflects purpose, passion, and perseverance. And it begs the question, why? Why do so few reach their full potential while so many fall short? Let me tell you the truth. Success is not an accident. It's alignment. It's the alignment of your life with your Creator's design, your calling, and your commitment to walk that path daily, even when it's hard. Let me break this down for you. I believe there are 5 deep reasons why 2% succeed and 98% don't. They don't know their purpose. The 98% are chasing the wrong thing. They think success is money or popularity or approval. But listen, you weren't created for comfort. You were created for a calling. Until you know why you're here, you'll waste your energy climbing the wrong ladder. The 2%, they've asked the tough questions. Why was I born? Or what breaks my heart? Or what gift has God placed in me that the world desperately needs? They don't wake up chasing trends. They wake up chasing truth. They wait for perfect conditions. Let me be real. If you're waiting for everything to be perfect before you start, you'll be waiting forever. The 98% are full of excuses. When I have more time, when I feel ready, when I get support. But the 2%, they start with what they have. David didn't wait for a sword. He used a sling. Noah didn't wait for rain. He built the ark. Friend, if you want to be in the 2%, you must obey even when the path isn't clear. Start small, trust big, and walk forward in faith. They fear failure more than they desire growth. Here's a hard truth. Most people would rather stay in a familiar prison than walk into unfamiliar freedom. Failure scares the 98%. They've let rejection, criticism, or a mistake define them. But listen, failure is not your identity. It's your instructor. The 2%, they don't see failure as the end. They see it as a step. They know falling is part of flying. What you call a setback, God often calls a setup. They refuse discipline. Success is not sexy. It's not always Instagrammable. It's hidden in habits, in early mornings, in quiet prayers, in unseen sacrifices. The 98% want the reward without the routine. They want harvest without sowing. They want results without responsibility. But the 2% live by discipline. They rise early. They plan. They read. They pray. They serve. They stay focused when others are distracted. The secret to your future is hidden in your daily routine. They live for themselves, not for a mission. This is where it all comes together. People who only live for themselves will eventually run out of motivation because self-centered dreams are small, but mission-centered lives are unstoppable. The 2% wake up every day knowing they are part of something bigger than themselves. They live to serve, to build, to love, to lift others. They don't just want success. They want significance. Let me tell you this. When you live for your God-given mission, you become dangerous to darkness. You become a force for good. And that's when heaven smiles and hell trembles. So what about you? Will you be the 98% who talk or the 2% who walk? Will you wait for permission or will you rise with purpose? Will you be ruled by comfort or will you chase calling? You were not born to be average. You were born to shine. You were not created to fit in. You were created to stand out. You were not saved just to survive. You were saved to soar. But here's the key. You can't do it in your own strength. You need wisdom greater than your own. You need strength deeper than your own. You need strength deeper than your own. You need to stay rooted in the one who made you, loves you, and has a plan for your life. Fear of failure is one of the most powerful forces holding people back from becoming who they were meant to be. It quietly whispers lies. What if you mess up? What will people say? You're not good enough. These voices don't shout, but they paralyze. They create imaginary barriers that seem more real than the opportunity waiting just beyond them. The 98% of people who never reach their full potential don't lack talent or ideas. They are simply afraid to fail. They confuse failure with identity. They think failing at something means they are a failure as a person, so they avoid risks. They stay small, and they settle for less than what they were created to do. But failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the process. It's the classroom where wisdom is born. It's the fire that refines character. The 2% of people who do succeed have a different relationship with failure. They see it as feedback, not finality. They understand that every successful person has a history of failures behind them. In fact, the only reason they reached success was because they were willing to walk through failure without quitting. They let failure teach them, not define them. They ask better questions. What did I learn? What can I do differently? How can I grow from this? And because they ask better questions, they get better outcomes. Most people never fail because they never try. They avoid anything that might make them look foolish or inexperienced. They want to be good at something before they even begin. But the truth is, no one starts out great. Growth demands awkwardness. It demands vulnerability. It demands getting it wrong before getting it right. The 2% know that fear will always be there, but they act anyway. They understand that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move forward in spite of it. They make peace with imperfection and step into the unknown with faith. When a child learns to walk, they fall countless times, but no one shames a baby for falling. We celebrate every step, every stumble, every attempt, because we know it's part of the journey. Somehow, as adults, we forget that. We let fear of embarrassment or judgment stop us from even trying. But failure is never wasted when it's surrendered to growth. It becomes fertilizer for your future. The 2% expect to fail at some point, and that expectation removes its power. They know it's coming, and they've already decided they won't let it stop them. There's also a deeper fear hiding beneath the surface. Fear of what success might demand. Some people don't fear failing. They fear what might happen if they succeed. Responsibility, change, pressure. But the 2% rise above that too. They stop negotiating with fear. They stop waiting for confidence and start choosing obedience. And in that choice, they find strength they didn't know they had. Because failure is no longer something to avoid. It's something to walk through on the way to something greater. Discipline is the invisible bridge between dreams and reality. Without it, even the greatest vision will wither into nothing. Most people live reactive lives. They do what feels good in the moment, what's convenient, what's comfortable. They move from emotion to emotion, from distraction to distraction, and call it a day. That's why the 98% struggle. They crave results but resist routines. They admire success from afar but refuse the habits that lead to it. They think discipline is restrictive, like a prison. But in truth, discipline is freedom. It's the ability to say yes to what matters most, even when it's hard. The 2% who succeed live by a different code. They understand that discipline is a daily decision, not a one-time act. They don't wait to feel motivated. They show up even when they're tired, uninspired, or discouraged. They've trained themselves to push through the resistance because they know that emotions are temporary, but purpose is permanent. Their lives are structured around priorities, not feelings. They built rituals, routines, and standards that carry them when motivation fails. They wake up early when others sleep. They choose study over scrolling. They protect their time like it's sacred because they know it is. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's choosing the right action over and over again, especially when it's boring, repetitive, or thankless. It's waking up to pray when no one sees. It's reading when it's easier to watch. It's working when it's tempting to quit. And the more you live this way, the more you build internal strength, freeing it. The 2% know that results don't come from what you do occasionally. They come from what you do daily. Small decisions repeated faithfully produce big outcomes over time. What separates the few who succeed is not just talent or intelligence. It's the ability to stay focused when others drift. It's the commitment to doing the hard work no one claps for. The 98% chase hacks and shortcuts. They want easy answers, fast money, and overnight success. But the 2% know that the long road is the real road. They embrace the grind because they trust the process. They sow in silence and believe the harvest will come in its time. Discipline also builds identity. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce a powerful belief that you are trustworthy, capable, and committed, and that identity shapes your future. The undisciplined live in a constant cycle of guilt and regret. They make plans and break them. They set goals and abandon them. Eventually, they stop believing in themselves. But the disciplined gain quiet confidence, not from hype or approval, but from knowing they did the work. They find pride in the process. There's a weight to discipline, yes, but it's a weight that strengthens you. It transforms your life from chaos to clarity. It builds momentum, mastery, and meaning. The disciplined live with fewer regrets because they chose what was right over what was easy. They don't just hope for a better future. They build it one choice at a time. There's a level of life that cannot be reached by selfish ambition alone. It requires a shift from self-centered goals to something far more powerful, a mission greater than yourself. Most people live small because they think small. Their goals revolve around their comfort, their success, their survival. That's why they burn out, give up, or never feel truly fulfilled. The 98% chase personal gain, but the 2% live for purpose. They understand that real success is not just about what you build for yourself, but what you build into others. It's not about how high you climb, but how many people you lift along the way. A mission greater than yourself gives your life depth. It turns ordinary tasks into acts of significance. It infuses your work with meaning. Whether you're teaching a child, starting a business, serving a community, or creating something new, when it's not just about you, it carries divine weight. The 2% realize that their time, talents, and resources were never meant to be hoarded. They were meant to be multiplied. They don't ask, what's in it for me? They ask, who will benefit from this? That one question changes everything. Living for a greater mission keeps you going when life gets hard. Because when it's only about you, hardship feels like punishment. But when you're driven by a higher purpose, pain becomes preparation. You're able to endure, sacrifice, and persist, not because it's easy, but because it matters. You rise earlier, stay later, give more, love deeper. You find strength you never knew you had because you're not just living for the next paycheck or applause. You're living for legacy. Your mission fuels your resilience. You stop shrinking back when it gets tough and start leaning in. This shift also brings clarity. You stop wasting time on petty things. You stop chasing applause and start chasing impact. You become less concerned with being impressive and more committed to being effective. The 2% don't just build careers, they build lives that count. They're driven by calling, not ego. And because their mission is anchored in something eternal, they cannot be shaken by temporary setbacks. Purpose that is rooted in service, in calling, in something sacred. This is what separates the fulfilled from the frustrated. The 2% give their lives to something that outlives them. And in doing so, they find the very joy and significance the rest of the world is desperately seeking. Because the truth is, you were never meant to just survive. You were meant to be a vessel of something greater. You were created not just to succeed in the eyes of the world, but to make an eternal impact in the lives of others. So, live with a mission that's bigger than comfort, deeper than profit, and stronger than fear. When your why is greater than yourself, your life becomes unstoppable. You stop counting days and start making days count. And that's what puts you in the 2%.